few seats open.
And we're here to hear Dr. Shannon Laughlin.
Kilbridge.
Shan-
Kilbridge. Laughlin, Kilbridge.
oh, Laughlin Tilbridge.
Kilbridge is good.
From the Rescue Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. So let me turn it over to Dr. Laughlin.
Kilbridge. You can call me Shannon, though. Just call me Shannon.
Better because I'm not doing too well.
You're doing great, John. Thank you very much. Thank you all so much for having me here tonight. I am Shannon Kilbridge, and I work with the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, and tonight's talk is about refugee resettlement in the capital region, past, present, and future. And there's been a lot of talk and conversations about refugees, and people use the term in lots of different ways. And there's a lot of confusion about what a refugee resettlement agency does and who we serve. So I wanted to pinpoint that a little bit. I can maybe talk a little bit off of that about what some of the other organizations do as well, but really my focus is with USCRI. And we are, even though it has U.S. committee in it, we are a nonprofit. We are sectarian. We are not a government agency. We're recognized nationally as a nonprofit. We are a national organization. And we are recognized as a public charity in New York State because we have the Albany field office in New York State. So USCRI as an agency has been around since 1911. It is, are we good? We're good? Okay. It is a network of field offices and partnerships that work with refugees and immigrants across the country. And our mission is to address voluntary migration worldwide and support their transition to dignified life. We do that through this series of field offices across the country and as official refugee resettlement agencies. USCRI Albany is the only refugee resettlement agency in the capital region. There are other groups that work with refugees and immigrants. We're the only one that's a resettlement agency. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means. As a field office just generally, we are highly diverse. We opened in 2005. This is our 20th year anniversary. In that time, we have resettled over 6,000 refugees in the capital region. It is a wonderful place for refugees to come and to connect and to integrate within our community. They are a wonderful source of life and diversity and joy in our community, and we're so grateful to work with them. And the people who work with them, with me on staff, are equally extraordinary. There are 34 people on staff at the field office. Of them, 56% are former refugees, some current refugees within their first year of arrival. Another 26% are first-generation immigrants. That means 82% of our staff have either gone through the refugee process or are coming in as a first-generation immigrant. We have 10 countries of origin on our staff. And our staff speak a total of 17 different languages. I am one of 2 people who only speaks English. I'm the outlier. When we don't have a language available, for example, we have Rohingya refugees who come through the region, an unusual language. We also have access to a language bank through our national offices. So even if we don't have on-site capacity, we have a lot that we can do to work with our clients who come in. So who are our clients and what does it mean to come through the refugee resettlement process? Resettlement in the United States is tied to resettlement in the world. Prior to the 50s, refugees, immigrants, resettlement was very ad hoc kinds of processes all around the world. After World War II and the creation of the United Nations, there was a realization that we needed something a little more substantial, a process of some kind. And first, the United Nations took that up in relationship to the refugees that came out of World War II. the 1951 convention, spoke to that need of talking about how countries who are a part of the United Nations at that time could address the refugees due to the Second World War. But pretty soon after that, there was a realization that we really need this to apply to more than just the people impacted by this one war. There are ongoing crises in other parts of the world. So in 1967, they also put together protocols where they did things like identify more specific processes and the definition of what a refugee is. That definition is someone who is unable or unwilling to return to their country of origin owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion. That was really important because before then, there wasn't a common understanding of even what a refugee is. And even now, that's still ongoing questions. Is that complete enough? Things like climate change are not a part of this. So natural disasters occurring do not fit in this current definition. So it is a living definition, but it is the standard definition for all the countries who eventually accepted the protocol, including the United States. At this time, 148 countries across the world have accepted the protocol. To accept the protocol, you're signing a treaty. But then the individual countries are responsible for creating their own laws about how they're going to live that out within their own countries. The United Nations doesn't tell a country how to do that. The countries create their own laws, which we did. The Refugee Act in 1980 was our interpretation of that 1967 protocol. It took us a little while to get there. It wasn't that there weren't immigrants and refugees coming in through that time, but it was also during the Vietnam War, that finishing up, people understanding that they wanted more of a process. As I said, the USCRI National Office has been existing all that time, but there wasn't a standardized process before then. It was more ad hoc. 1980 Refugee Act, legislation comes through saying we need to make this more uniform. We need to have some kind of way of bringing people in, especially as we connect with the United Nations process. And it passed, and it was bipartisan support. I know that's hard to believe, but it was unanimously passed in the Senate, unanimously passed. Can you imagine that right now? No, nothing. It was very popular because it addressed some of these known issues of people who wanted to create these pathways. So what did it do? It adopted the formal definition from the United Nations. So yes, we agree with this definition. We're going to keep it. It created the Office of Refugee Resettlement at the federal level, and then individual states also have their own office that reports and talks to them. It established the relationship between the president and Congress in determining how many refugees were permitted any fiscal year. So every year since 1980, the president sets, it's called the Presidential Determination Letter, the number of refugees who will be allowed in through this process. And it's gone up, it's gone down, it's gone across each party in terms of numbers, height and low. The highest number was its first year, that was under President Carter, and it was 247,000 around there. Second highest number allowed was under President Reagan, and it was somewhere around 235,000 a year. So it, over the years, has generated a lot of support, depending on what the needs were, if there were things happening around the world that needed particular attention. It also set a minimum number and a maximum number, but those numbers could change if the president worked with Congress. So there was ways for that sort of checks and balances, bipartisan conversations to happen. It also addressed asylum seekers. Now, this is a different category, but it's one that we've heard a lot in the news, asylum seekers coming to the country. Asylum seekers differ from refugees that come through the refugee resettlement process, and I'm going to talk about the refugee process in just a minute, because they do the process while in the country. Someone coming through the refugee resettlement process has done their paperwork and process outside of the country. When they arrive, when they are sent to us from the government, they are already proven to have refugee status. Someone coming for sanctuary, for asylum, in this law, the process was outlined how they would do that. And they do that process while they're in the country. They have to prove that they meet the definition of a refugee. And that's a very difficult process to do, but it is a legal process. It's a part of the Refugee Act of 1980. Refugee resettlement agencies, though, work with the ones who have gone through the process with the United Nations in the way that the Refugee Act of 1980 created using nonprofit agencies to implement. So we are a part of the process that takes place with the United Nations, coming through Homeland Security now, but it used to be the State Department, and sent to places all across the country who contract with the government to do this work. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. If an asylum seeker's petition is approved and they've shown legally that they meet the definition of a refugee, we can also help them. Once they're an asylee, they're in the same category as a refugee, same pathway. There's also a few other people that we help along the way. These are, again, outlined by the government in our contracts with them. So it can be an SIV. There's a lot of abbreviations and anachronisms. An SIV is a special immigrant visa. These are people who helped our government during wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and now their lives are at risk because of their cooperation with us. So if they come to the United States, they can come to any refugee agency, resettlement agency, and we can provide them the same services that we provide someone sent to us through the United Nations State Department process. We can also work with other groups designated by Congress or the president, such as Ukrainians. United for Ukraine was a slightly different process. That was a process of temporary protected status, humanitarian parole. That's when people are taken out of a situation quickly because of, in this case, a war, and given a place of relative peace and stability. But the ultimate goal for them is to return back home when that war ends. So the things like TPS, temporary protected status, they're not meant to be a pathway to citizenship. They're meant to be a safe haven while an issue is happening in someone's country. If the government designates them to us, we can take care of them too, and we do. We have Ukrainian clients, we have clients from all over the world, we have SIVs. Majority of our clients, though, come through the formal process with the United Nations. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that unless anyone has any questions. Okay, feel free to jump in if you do. All right, so the typical process for someone coming through is you have a client, a person who is displaced from their country. Displacement can happen in all sorts of ways. It can happen internally to someone's country. It can happen where they leave their country. Currently, there is an estimated 123 million forcibly displaced persons worldwide. Of those, 73.5 million are internally displaced. They are still in their country. These are not people who have made it to another country, to a refugee camp or a settlement where the United Nations can help them into this process. So if they're internally displaced, all of those people are out of our ability to care. The ones who are able to make it to a second location become potentially a part of this process. Less than 1% of them will be resettled any given year. It is a very long and difficult process. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If I'm running from war, from persecution, I might not have documents that prove my identity. I might not have the ability to show my birth certificate, a passport, anything that can help connect me to an identity. It's very hard to go through background checks without those things. So very few people go through this process, and it's a very long time. When you see images of refugee camps where people have been living there their entire lives, that's why. They are stuck. The process itself begins outside of their country. So their first step is to get outside of their country. Once they are, if they can get into an interview with the United Nations Center, that becomes their first step, connecting with the support centers. And the centers work around the world. And they go through the initial kind of screening. Do you have any paperwork? Can you prove who you are? Can you prove your background and connections? From then, if they might come to the United States, maybe they have a tie here, a family person here, some connection, they would be interviewed by the Department of Homeland Security, used to be Department of State, but also the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS. USCIS is a government agency. USCRI is a nonprofit. Ask me how many times those two things get confused. All the time. USCIS is the one that does all of the immigration processes for all kinds of visas, of all types. So they're interviewed in that process as well. If they get through that process, they go through medical and security services. That's a whole separate round of background checks, medical checks, what are your medical needs and your background and status. If they get through that process, they get transferred to the International Organization for Migration, IOM. IOM arranges for travel to any of the countries that are accepting the refugees. This travel is not free. The refugees have to pay back that expense. When they come to their host country, they come with debt. That debt, they have time to pay that off. But not only do they not have much or anything with them, they are coming with debt. After often 5, 6, 7 years going through this process in refugee camps. They are typically allowed 2 suitcases per person. That includes the children. At that point, once their travel has been secured, a resettlement agency is notified of their arrival. That's when we come in. Every year, typically what happens when the president sets a presidential determination number, each resettlement agency, there's currently 10, it's shifting a little bit now, but there had been 10 across the country, contracts to receive a certain amount. Each one says, we can do the things that are expected of us for 500 at this location, 600 at this location. At that time, once that's agreed with the government, we all sign our contracts, they start sending them to us. And we're supposed to get a month's notice before they arrive. I've worked here at USCRI for a year and a half, and last year when we were in full steam ahead, we very rarely got a full month's notice. Sometimes we got a week. A couple of times we got a day. Because there are responsibilities that we have to the people who are sent to us. We have to assist them in very particular ways, especially in their first 90 days. The first 90 days are called reception and reception and placement. Those first 90 days involve meeting them at however they're transporting. In the capital region, it's through trains, so we meet them at the train station. Bringing them to their house, either their permanent location, usually an apartment in certain areas of downtown Albany, or if we have trouble having one available right away, a hotel. Going through initial paperwork to determine their current level of need, making sure over the next 90 days that they have the accurate connections, important connections with government officials, with their new doctors, with a health assessment on site here, with their education system, depending on their children, what the age their children are, with employment, if they're able to work right away. Legally, they could work from day one, but obviously there's a lot involved coming to a new country in terms of their language, their experience, their background, understanding what needs to happen. So we transition them in, we do some community orientation sessions, everything from how to ride the bus system, to what does the call to the doctor look like, to what does banking mean in the United States, what are our laws and regulations, especially when working with the police in the city, all of the different things. You know, we do a trip on the bus to show them exactly how that happens. And then we repeat those every 6 weeks, because as their language improves, they can understand more of it. When they arrive, they each receive a welcome money. For each person, as of last year, it was $1,125 per person, a one-time welcome money amount. That money is meant to help them in all of their transitions, pay for their apartment, pay for their food, pay for their clothing, their furniture. Obviously, that's not enough. If you know what an apartment costs in Albany, it wouldn't even make that. So typically what we have done is worked with our community members and our partners to get donated items to set up the houses. So there are certain things by law that we have to have available to them: mattresses, kitchen supplies, bathroom supplies, linens, and then there's certain things we try to have available to them: toys for kids, curtains. Curtains are not required. We try to have them. And we also raise money to help them make the gap so that they can keep as much of their welcome money as possible, while their case managers help them do things like sign up for benefits. So they are benefit eligible when they first arrive, because it takes a little while to get connected to a job that they can do while they're learning the language and they're dealing with transportation issues. We have great partners who help us with that. Employment partners. Walmart is a big, if you have ever gone to the largest Walmart in the world, which is in Albany, I don't know if you know that, but it's 2 stories high. They're also a great employer of our clients, as well as the Albany Medical Hospital. But it's their first position. It's hard for them if the language barrier is very big, and if they're still struggling with the transportation piece. So the benefits are a huge bridge for them as they're getting acclimated. Yes?
That money that they get, that welcome money, does that have to be paid back? Is that part of their
That money does not have to be paid back. The money to get transferred, to fly over here, that has to be paid back. They get a long period of time to do that, but it's still a debt.
Thanks. And then had a question about, is there where are most people coming from? Is there an area that's more prominent than others?
So what tends to happen regionally is once you have people from one area come, more come because that's a tie and a community connection. In our region, largest group by far is from Afghanistan. We have we have great restaurants in Albany if you want to come down. And there's one in Clifton Park here too, Olive and Pita.
Yeah, this is great to talk to the owners there.
Zebby, I'm going to plug Zebby right now. He did a great job for us with World Refugee Day. Amazing food. One of the many things that they give to us in this community. But the, well, now I lost it. Afghanistan is our first one. So that definitely the largest group. The other next groups that are largest would be Democratic Republic of the Congo, Burma, Sudan, Syria, Ukraine. And then we have a lot of other smaller groups, because they can come from anywhere that the United Nations works. And then also if the US sends them to us too through other processes. So it takes a lot of time. If you can imagine coming to a country where you don't speak the language, you don't know the culture, you're trying to figure everything out. Even if you had an education before you arrived, it doesn't always transfer over. So we've had people who were doctors in their home country come to the United States. They can't be doctors here. Their credentials don't transfer over. And you can go through a process of getting your credentials transferred over. It's a very long process for most employment. For doctors, you basically have to start right over. So there's that piece of the process of integration as well, where you're figuring out what else you might be able to do. We also have people who were not literate in their home native language, coming over, trying to learn a new language. So we actually just got a new grant that will include, it's called ESOL, English for Speakers of Other Languages. We used to call it ESL, English as a Second Language, but a lot of people come in already knowing more than one language. It's just not English as one of those languages. So typically we call it ESOL. And we have a part of it that's geared towards pre-literate, people who have not been literate in their home language, because that's a different learning process. So there are big obstacles in terms of the cultural questions, the linguistic questions, the working through the trauma of having gone through living in the refugee, leaving their home country, living in the refugee camp, arriving in a new place. 90 days is not enough to take care of that. That is the process, the reception and placement process, 90 days. Fortunately, in New York State, we have additional programs that support us through their citizenship, and that can be 5 years and beyond. So USCRI, I have, and I'm not going to read through all of these, I'm just being attentive to time, but I brought a list of all of our programs that we provide for people all the way through until they become citizens. And that can be, so your status as a refugee lasts for a year, then you get a green card, and you're a green card holder for 5 years, and then you can apply, go take your citizenship test. We help with the citizenship process. We help with some of the legal pieces around that with the green card process. And through all that time in between, we have different programs that support them in different ways. The foundational program is called Integration. That's what we refer to it as. This is the program that provides case management throughout any of their different needs. It tends to be front heavy in their time, like the first year or two, helping them continue to learn the language, helping them if they need to talk with doctors again, helping them if their kids are going to school and they're having trouble understanding what's happening at the school system and what it means to be in the school system, transportation questions, someone's having a new baby, really joyous things too. But we also have special programs such as our employment program. So this is after the initial placement, maybe they want to do a different kind of work. Maybe they start to improve in their English language and they want to do more than just the entry-level things and they want to explore more. Maybe new opportunities have happened and they want to work on a resume. We have a special program that's called Professional Pathways for people who did come from a country where they were a professional of some kind. Oftentimes it's like an engineer or IT kind of person, and then that has a special person designated to help them find more specialized work. We have programs that are geared towards younger people and mentoring, programs that are geared towards older people, 60 and plus. Because families come together, you can have multiple generations coming all at once. And it's very hard for people over 60 in their own particular way to integrate. The language issue is harder. There's a lot of concern about isolation because everyone's trying to become self-sufficient. So there's specialized programs for them and special citizenship processes for them as well. There can be doctor waivings of certain parts of the test depending on if they have medical reasons to not do that. So they have special support to do that. We also have programs, especially for new Americans, that focuses exclusively on getting ready for the citizenship test, which is probably one that would be hard for a lot of us to pass. But it's a wonderful if you've never gone to a naturalization ceremony, oh my gosh, they're open to the public. They are amazing to see the people who are coming forward. I have enjoyed going for members of our staff who have become citizens while I have been on staff. And I would just highly recommend it to everybody. So in terms of where we are now, those are the programs that are going on. And you may have heard in January that reception and placement was suspended. So up until January 20th, we were still bringing in clients from the regular process. And there was a suspension of the program for a 90-day evaluation. And then that 90 days was extended again. And we are still in that suspension process. So all of the new refugees coming in have ceased through this process. We have no indication when that will start up again. Also ceased during this time was the acceptance of SIVs, Special Immigration Visa holders. However, last week, that was opened up again. So we just received a new family who came in. We're hoping for more. And obviously, we're hoping for more refugees to get a determination number, to get this started again and reconnected with our communities. We can also, receive special groups as designated by the government if it comes through that way as well. And our hope is that all of them are able to come through because it really is a wonderful asset for our community, not only socially but economically. The refugee community has a higher percentage rate of entrepreneurship than native-born Americans. They are huge contributors to our economic growth, especially in places like Albany that doesn't necessarily have pockets of growth in the same areas where they reside and they do business. So they are a great benefit to us and just a joy to work with, I must say, as well. For people who are interested in working with us in some way, in helping in some way, there's lots of different ways that people can do that, individually and as groups. St. Edward's has been very helpful in the past. You did a wonderful student back to school drive for us that was amazing, that got us through that whole first wave in the fall. And we do those year round because typically we don't know when the kids are going to need things through the year. And other churches have done that as well for us, and it could be particular drives like diaper drives, or we're doing a summer drive for kids, so soccer balls. If you know anyone who has soccer balls, give them to us. So there's all sorts of things that people do, like to do a drive. Individuals can come and volunteer with us as well. So we have, and I put a couple of things out here right over for now. We have mentor opportunities, both for families, and these are, you have to go through a background check. Anyone who works directly with clients has to go through a background check. Know that a check that goes through volunteers at your church can't be used, I'm sorry, has to be ours. But if you want to work directly with clients, there are opportunities to mentor through the youth mentoring process, through a family connection process where you work one-on-one with the whole family, multi-generational family. We have English volunteers, although they just had their last day for the summer yesterday, but that will start up again in the fall. We have people who come and sit at our front desk to reception to receive people as they're coming in to talk to their case managers. That's at our field office. We're on Washington Avenue right next to the public library, if you know where that is. We have people who come and sort donations, which is a huge thing because as people are coming through, they all get mixed up. We have people who help with food deliveries especially for families who maybe are having, it used to be when they first arrived, they would get food deliveries for the first few weeks. Now we have people who are getting their hours cut back, people who are employed, but their hours are being cut back. And so this helps close a gap. So there's a number of different ways to mentor, just also helping with paperwork and those kind of things too. Some people aren't as comfortable with working directly with clients, so there's lots of opportunities with that. We also always look for people who know employers who are interested in working with our clients. It is amazing working with our clients. It is not always the easiest process, though. If you can imagine someone coming in who doesn't speak the language, you have to have a certain kind of job that's going to fit, first of all, and a certain kind of patience. Now, they have case managers who help them in that process, in that conversations, with the paperwork, with the trainings. But it is, our employers who work with us go out of their way to make sure that there's a good relationship in building, and it has been a wonderful process in that way. Our biggest restriction, especially for the newest people, are transportation. So it's very hard, for example, for someone to come up to Clifton Park. We are trying to pair up with a driving course. There's a place in Albany that lets you they give you a car to learn on, and then a car to take your test on. So that's an ongoing project to help with that transportation issue. But for the most part, our clients do use the bus system in the Albany area. And lots of other ways, I encourage people to talk. If you talk with me after, or give a call or send an email if you are interested in learning more. So I've been talking for a while. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. We're going to get the microphone to you.
How do you get funded?
So a refugee resettlement agency contracts with the federal government and agree to a certain number of people we will receive as an agency. So USCRI contracts with the federal government and says, this year we will accept 6,000 refugees across the whole country. And they work with each of their field offices to say, okay, how many do you think you can support? So last year, we supported in Albany 480 in the capital region. When we supply the services, we get paid for the services that we supply. So it's a contract, right? In addition to the federal government, in New York State, we also supply programming supported by New York State as well. Some of that's kind of pass-through money from the government that they use, and some of it's directly from New York State. So it's called a bidding system with an N. We have a contract. We say we're going to supply these services. We're going to do this many citizenship classes. We're going to do this many classes on banking. We're going to do this many contact hours for case management. We're going to, that kind of thing. And then we tell the state, oh, this is what we did this month, and they reimburse us for that. So that's another sort of level. And then we also do foundations. So I write grants, for example. I'm in the middle of writing a grant for a maternal care program and children's program, women and children's program. Those are a different kind of source. They're smaller amounts of money, but they can usually support a single person. And then we get some corporate sponsors. So M&T Bank has helped us with essential needs. And then we also have individual donors who are amazing as well, like monetary donors, in addition to in-kind, which is like all of the, thank you very much for coming, all of the drives, for example, strollers or those kind of things. Those are called in-kind donations. We also have donors who give us financial support. Usually what you use that money for is for direct refugee assistance more than anything else. So when we're looking to fill the gap, maybe, because the contracts are very specific about how you can spend the money. So you don't get a lot of leeway if someone might need their utility bill paid for a month, because all of a sudden, like all of us, we suddenly have a $700 electric bill for no discernible reason. And so we can do those kind of filling in the gaps with usually that's what we use direct donor funds for. Any other questions?
Your clients are all approved by the government, come with all the paperwork, they're fully, as opposed to all the migrants we hear about.
So when you work with a refugee resettlement agency, and like, as I said, we are the only refugee resettlement agency. We are contracting with the government. If it's this refugee resettlement process, it's through the United Nations. But if the government tells us other contracts, we can take those contracts as well. So that's SIVs, that's Ukraine. It can also be other populations. In the first Trump administration, we contracted with the government to provide legal services to unaccompanied minors. That was a contract that we fulfilled with the government. So if they give us that contract and we work out the details of that, so they didn't come through this process, they came through a different process, but our contract came through the government. Is that clear?
Yep.
Okay. There are other agencies in the Albany area that work with people regardless of their status. Depending on what your interest is, I can point you in their direction. Any other questions?
So, no more questions? Okay, let's thank Dr. Shannon.
Thank you all very much for being here.